Epcot was planned as the theme park that was always moving forward and looking to the future. Originally, when something was closed within the park, such as World of Motion or even the original Journey into Imagination, it was for something new, even if that something new was way worse. One whole pavilion though was closed and never replaced. Welcome back to Expedition Epcot, we are heading to the wonders of life. A Life and Health Pavilion was planned for Epcot since its concept began, but at the time a sponsor could not be found to cover the costs of the pavilion before the park opened. Promotional work for the pavilion was shown as early as 1978 by Imagineering. The early concepts in true Epcot in the 80s fashion would feature an Omnimover style attraction called The Incredible Journey Within, where you would travel through the body on red blood cell vehicles, with oversized physical displays of different organs. The early concept saw the pavilion with a circus theme, with a midway leading off to the main attractions. During planning, the location of the pavilion was changed multiple times, originally in Future World West before coming to its spot between the Universe of Energy and Horizons. One of the first names for the pavilion was to be the Human Dynamic. It wasn't until June 1987 when MetLife Insurance would sign on to sponsor the pavilion it would become known as the Wonders of Life.
On the roof are solar cells that help power our exploration of the world of energy inside the attraction. Next is the future site of the Life and Health Pavilion, to be presented by Metropolitan Life, which will utilize amazing new ride technology to take guests on a remarkable journey through the human body.
Construction of the pavilion would begin in February 1988, 6 years after the opening of Epcot, with a planned opening of fall 1989. The pavilion would feature 4 main sections: the dome, the ride building, the show building, and the support building bridging the gap between the ride and the theatre. The pavilion was officially dedicated on October 30th, 1989 by Michael Eisner.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of the grand dedication opening of the Wonders of Life.
It was the last original Epcot pavilion to be built from scratch without replacing something. At a rumoured cost of $100 million to create the pavilion, it was not cheap. Considering with the budget cut, one of the most impressive pavilions, Horizons, cost $60 million, but MetLife were planning on being featured within Epcot for a long time, and it was seen as a worthy investment.
The 9th major pavilion at Epcot Center's Future World is now open to the public. It's the Wonders of Life, sponsored by Metropolitan Life.
The pavilion itself would require constant upkeep and refreshes to stay relevant with the healthy living changes it was aiming to promote and educate guests on. The entrance would feature a 72-foot high DNA tower. The building itself would be a 100,000 square foot dome. Like entering the land, you would be on a raised up section as you entered after heading up a small hill. And just like most other pavilions, the Wonders of Life was not an attraction by itself, but featured multiple within them. The 250-foot diameter main dome held half of the pavilion's show space. Standing at 65 feet high, the dome ceiling had skylights to let natural sunlight into the building and to create an airy feel within. In the center of the roof, a large abstract mobile hung. The free-moving structure had large glass blue and purple panels suspended from it, which would occasionally collide, creating a large bang throughout the pavilion. The circus theme from the early concepts was carried into the final building, and inside would feature educational and fun shows as well as its 2 main attractions, Cranium Command and Epcot's first true thrill ride, Body Wars. While these may be the 2 most well-remembered attractions inside, many other attractions actually existed within. It's those that we're going to be taking a look at this episode.
Inside the Golden Dome is the Fitness Fairgrounds. Here guests enjoy shows and exhibits like the Sensory Funhouse.
Sensory Funhouse, an interactive funhouse, featured multiple small attractions related to the human senses, each a hands-on experience including a reading braille, touchy subjects, crooked room, audio antics, perplexion pipes, and optical illusions, each testing different senses, specifically touch, sight, and sound. The Wonder Cycles, similar to the ones inside Communicore, allow guests to pedal the bike and move through a course on the screen in front of them. Some of the scenes you could choose to pedal through would be the 100th Anniversary Rose Parade and Disneyland in California, as well as a micro course. MetLife Review was a series of consoles that let you input data about your health and see recommendations on how to improve it. You would also find the Well and Good store nearby offering sporting good themed merchandise, including character-themed golf clubs. To the right of the entrance was the pure and simple counter-service restaurant, known mostly for its Wonder Waffles, which were essentially Belgian waffles. It offered lighter offerings compared to most theme park food, such as salads and wraps. Get it? Because it's the Health Pavilion. The very centre of the pavilion had 3 small theatres which showed different shows. The first as you entered the pavilion was Goofy About Health.
Goofy About Health is a multi-screen video presentation about good health habits starring Goofy.
Yes, the king is returning to his castle.
A small theatre with multiple screens able to seat around 100 guests. The 8-minute show showcased the stress Goofy was under living urban life and his own bad habits. Goofy banished his bad habits and lives a happier and healthier life. The story was told using recycled animation from over 20 cartoon shorts on the 7 screens inside. All of the films used were created over 28 years, so Goofy could even look different within this same show. Next door was the Anatomical Players Theatre.
The Anatomical Players perform skits on good health, like this one called Flossed in Space.
The final theatre was the Birth Theatre, showing The Making of Me, a 16-minute film about conception and childbirth starring none other than Epcot favourite Martin Short.
What was I saying before?
When it first opened, it was slightly controversial, as the topic of reproduction was considered unfit for a theme park. The show eventually even got a parental advisory warning. The story of the show had Martin Short wonder how he was created by his parents, and viewers were transported back in time to see his parents as young adults. The movie then switches to animation with a segment that shows cartoon sperm trying to win the race to the egg.
What's going on? Haven't you heard? It's the big race. First one to find the egg gets to make a baby. And the rest of us?
Nothing graphic was shown though within, and the movie was light-hearted and educational with some key aspects in the process left out. The outer ring of the pavilion also had a small attraction called Coach's Corner. Guests would enter a batting cage and receive feedback from pre-recorded athletes. Other small attractions filled out the dome, such as the Frontiers in Medicine, displaying research and achievements in modern medicine, which was actually updated quite regularly. The pavilion, of course, also had a VIP sponsor lounge located at the back of it. In late 1991, the freestanding entranceway sign for the pavilion was changed out for a smaller version by the side of the entrance. The original archway was actually installed at the parking entrance at the Magic Kingdom. During the 90s, the pavilion was one of the most popular and busy in the whole of Future World. On June 1st, 2001, just 12 years after the opening, MetLife ended their sponsorship of the pavilion, rumoured to be because of a dispute about extended life insurance benefits for Disney employees. All references to them were removed and update and maintenance to the pavilion ended overnight. Coach's Corner was closed and left abandoned while the rest of the pavilion continued to operate. The Anatomical Players though were also discontinued and the third stage just sat empty. The rest of the pavilion had multiple problems. The Wonder Cycles would constantly break down and be taken away and never repaired. At times, the pavilion was so understaffed the Making of Me film just was not open to guests. Cleaning of the pavilion was also lacking, with a thick layer of dust covering the awnings and parts of the building. Parts of the inside building actually just fell off onto the floor. Originally, guests were required to park strollers outside the pavilion when entering, but this no longer happened as no cast members were there working to towel them. Body Wars and Cranium Command cast members were also cut drastically, but we're going to look at those in a separate video. Just a few years after losing its sponsorship, on January 4th, 2004, the pavilion became listed as a seasonal attraction, and was only planned to operate during peak attendance. Everything left inside was essentially frozen in time, and had been since 2001. Well and Good and Pure and Simple closed entirely, never reopening. Frontiers of Medicine was just walled off, and the Wonder Cycles were covered over until they were all removed. The Wonders of Life Pavilion had lost its life. When it did open seasonally, many of the audio and effects inside just didn't work. January 1st, 2007, the pavilion once again closed after the busy Christmas period, but this time none of its attractions would ever operate again. In August 2007, the exterior DNA helix and marquee were removed, and the Body Wars mural was just painted over. In an odd move, the Barebones Pavilion would be reused, but not as anything to do with life or even Future World, but as the festival centre. Just 9 months after closing, the Golden Dome building reopened. During the 2007 festival, signs were still up for the different attractions, which were just standing but not operating. Inside, you had to walk around all of the old attractions to see the food and wine demonstrations for the year. In even odder fashion, some of the former attractions were retrofitted for use during the festival. Cranium Command's entrance was turned into a stage where wine seminars were held. The old screens and animatronics sat walled off away from guest view. While in 2007, most of the pavilions still existed behind walls, during the festival over the next years, Disney began to hide and remove as much as possible. The Sensory Funhouse, Cranium Command Archway, and Coach's Corner were all eventually demolished. The center theaters were all gutted and would become home to small stages for the festival center. Eventually, the pavilion began to lose its original circus colors and themes, and it was repainted, but even now in 2018, if you look around, you can still spot remnants of the old Wonders of Life pavilion. Even the hanging mobile on the roof no longer turning. Wonders of Life unfortunately lived a short life that essentially morphed into the empty shell used during festivals today. Again, the failure of Epcot's sponsor system closed some well-loved attractions within Future World. The future of this pavilion remains uncertain. Rumours constantly exist that something is coming to the pavilion, and the roof repairs completed recently have sparked the rumour mill once again. Right now though, the shell of this pavilion remains a temporary home for the now multiple festivals within Epcot. Nothing to do with let alone the theme of the pavilion it was designed for, but the whole of Future World. After years of reworking and repainting the space, the pavilion now looks like it was kind of designed for this purpose. You don't see though when walking around the large empty abandoned buildings at the back of the pavilion. During the later seasonal operation years, the attractions within were in such a poor shape that most would never really ever work in. The pavilion limped on and eventually its fate was sealed. The Wonders of Life began before Epcot existed as a celebration of life and what could be. Epcot has always been changing and creating new experiences to replace the old, but this is one sad part of Epcot that was just given up on and left to its fate. A sad story of a once amazing pavilion full of life, which died a slow and tragic death.
The theme of Wonders of Life is a celebration of fitness and wellness and the joy of being alive.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Expedition Epcot. We're not finished with the pavilion yet though, and we'll be taking a detailed look at those 2 attractions that existed within. Special thank you to our Patreons for supporting the channel. Join us again on Expedition Epcot as we continue our journey through the Wonders of Life. We will see you next time.